Hi, it's Jody Medell, Doctor of Physical Therapy and Transformational Coach, welcoming you back to a discussion on trauma and healing. And today I want to talk about your driver. What is it that drives you? I think this is super important because depending on what it is that's driving what we do, we can drive ourselves down into a hole or we can drive ourselves into expansion. So I'm going to give you an example. I come from a past of trauma, and my response to the trauma I experienced was to become a perfectionist. And this was because that inner critic that we've talked about that comes to light, that negative aspect of our ego identity, for me, that inner critic that gave me blame and shame and guilt and not good enough, my way to counteract my inner critic was to be perfect. So my goal from when I can remember as a kid was to perfect everything. I became the best piano player I could be. I became a 4.0 plus student. I was valedictorian in elementary school, in high school, and eventually at one of the universities I went to. It drove me to, meaning the perfectionism, drove me to be the best I could be. It came out in my running. I would show up at events and I had to win the race. And if I didn't win the race, that inner critic was right there telling me I wasn't good enough. So when the driver is that inner critic, or your response to that inner critic to be perfect, which is what the case was for me, there comes a point in time when it doesn't work anymore. You kind of realize that you can't be the best at everything you try to be the best at. There's always somebody who's better than you. And even more discouraging or upsetting is the fact that when your driver is in response to your inner critic, and my example, being a perfectionist, when that is the case, then everyone's an enemy. Everyone is potentially your opposition. You're always gonna compete against what you don't know out there. You don't know how good or bad somebody is, so you view them as your enemy because you gotta defeat them, because the only way you're gonna appeal to your inner critic is to be better than the rest. And so if everyone's your enemy, then who's your friend? And your friends, how are you defining your friends? People who then can't somehow compete with you? You're only comfortable around those who are perceived in your mind's eye as being less than you because they'll never win against you in anything that you're trying to be the best at. And so it ends up being this losing game, right? And like I said, at some point you got to come to grips with the fact that you can't excel and be the best at everything. And so how do we deal with this if our driver is the inner critic? And the whole reason I even brought this up is that I was meditating yesterday. Yesterday was 11/11, a very significant portal that opens up that allows us to reduce the veil between us and the divine and manifest that which we hope to have in our lives. And it allows us to feel and perceive divinity, the esoteric, the spirit realm, better or with greater ease than is typical for us. So I was meditating yesterday. I meditate every day, but it was a special meditation due to the significance of 11/11. And what came through loud and clear to me was one, dismantle the ego into surrender. And what I realized for me is that as much as I can talk about being the observer, stepping back, watching what goes on around you, not diving deep into the film that's playing out in front of you, the story that you're telling yourself about what is, but stepping back and observing it, detaching from the outcome of it, and being able to respond in an appropriate way with love from your heart to whatever it is that's going on, if it needs a response. And so with the inner critic, which I'm getting better at recognizing and getting into the observer state so I can respond versus react. But the whole point here is that if your driver is your inner critic, you need to take a look at that. And again, the driver, the inner critic, the negative aspect of the ego identity, when in my meditation I was told to disassemble the ego, what I took from that is I need to spend more time stepping back and being aware of when the ego is taking charge and being my driver. Because what is the ego? And I'm talking about the negative aspect, the inner critic, which is so strong in those who've had trauma. When that becomes the driver, what's the end? And are you ever really pleased with the outcome? Is it ever enough? Is it good enough? The inner critic won't let it be that. So you're going to be always on this treadmill of life, running faster, trying to get to that next thing, that next accomplishment. But at what cost? And what is the outcome? So, dismantling the ego is a reset to say, time to step back and observe the madness that inner critic has created, and figure out what that driver is and where you really want your driver to be. So I'm going to talk about another personal story. My son, I raised him to live from his heart. I didn't want him to have the same experiences I did. And so everything he does in life is done with joy. Not everything, most things. But his driver truly is his heart. He knows in his heart space what he loves, what feels really yummy to him, what doesn't feel so good. And he chooses to go after that which feeds his heart and fills him with a sense of joy. He doesn't lead from the need to prove anything. He doesn't lead from this incessant inner critic coming in to say, come on, keep going, you're not good enough, you got more to accomplish. That is not his story at all. And when I see the results of what he does, based on leading with his heart and being filled with joy, it results in an expansive sense of being, of knowing why you're here on planet Earth and feeling very comfortable being in your skin and doing what you do. And it shines a light that others can see. And others want to grab hold of that energy because it's high vibration energy that is attractive. You know, when you make accomplishments and your driver is your inner critic seeking out perfectionism, you tend to push people away when you get to that podium. Because in your own mind, because the driver is the mind where the ego resides and not the heart, again, you're viewing everyone as the enemy or the opposition. And so it doesn't allow for this inner light from your heart to shine and to be expansive and to pull others in because it feels good. It actually pushes others away because they can feel that you're an untouchable. And that's not a great place to reside. So again, in my meditation, with the streaming in of dismantling the ego and surrendering. The surrender is to let it go. Let go of that attachment to the inner critic, to that negative aspect of that ego identity, and step back and observe. Stay in your heart space. Live from your heart space. What is your heart telling you to do? Let your heart be your driver. And from that, you will come to a place that is of peace, where your vibration is nice and high, and you attract in goodness. And your light then allows others to shine as well and jump on board with being in that light and in that presence. So the challenge is today to step back, find out what your driver is for the things that you do, and take time to manifest what it is that you want to bring into your life by diving into the driver of your heart, not your mind, your inner critic, or the ego identity, but again, let the driver be your heart. All right, cheers to you. Have a fabulous week, and I'll see you soon for another video. Thanks.